He may be playing the harmonica now, but 40 years ago Frank Serpico was blowing the whistle on widespread corruption in the New York Police Department. It made him a pariah on the force, and he was shot during a drug bust in 1971 while screaming for his backup.
This is what the system wants to do. It wants to intimidate the good guys. And that's why it's so important for individuals to stand up and do the right thing.
The case against the CIA has always lacked information on how precisely its officers set about their covert action. Philip Agee, now living in Cornwall, was such an officer, and his diary, to be published by Penguin in the next few weeks, gives his version of what life is really like inside the agency. He names every officer and agent he's ever met, and describes the CIA man's work in daily detail.
Why should I be delicate with them? I don't expect any quarter in return, because this is part of the conflict that's going on in the world right now. The CIA is enforcing American economic exploitation, and people are dying, and people are starving because of this system.
My expertise, as you know, is CIA, Marine Corps, 3 CIA secret wars. I had a position in the National Security Council in 1975 as the chief of the Angola task force running the secret war in Angola. It was the 3rd CIA secret war I was part of. They undertake to run operations in every corner of the globe. They also undertook the license of operating just totally above and beyond U.S. laws. They had a license, if you will, to kill, but also they took that to a license to smuggle drugs, a license to do all kinds of things to other people in other societies in violation of international law, our law, and every principle of nations working together for a healthier and more peaceful world. You come up with 3,000 major operations and over 10,000 minor operations, every one of them illegal, every one of them disruptive of the lives and societies of other peoples, and many of them bloody and gory beyond comprehension almost.
Now, girls, forgive me, concerned about the possibility of going to prison for this?
We have a quick flag.
Wouldn't you go to prison to tell such a story?
I realize now that my previous attitude had been simply mistaken, that I wasn't discharging my responsibilities to the country, to the Constitution, to the public, or to the troops, by keeping those secrets which had led to the escalation of the war, that had been wrong.
One of the most startling cases of government whistleblowing is Sibel Edmonds, who's been called the most gagged woman in history. Sibel is an Iranian-born former FBI translator who's been fighting for years to tell her story. Until now. After waiting 340 days for FBI clearance of her memoir, she decided to release the book on her own, in full, without any approval or redactions. The book gives explosive allegations that indict multiple levels of the government in traitorous deception and cover-up inside the FBI.
After 9/11, they took one of the programs I had done, or the back-end part of it, and started to use it to spy on everybody in this country. So that was a program they created called Stellar Wind. That was separate and compartmented from the regular activity that was ongoing, because it was doing domestic spying. All the equipment was coming in, I knew something was happening, but then when the contractors I had hired came and told me what they were doing, it was clear where all the hardware was going and what they were using it to do.
For the first time, 25-year-old U.S. Army Private Bradley Manning has admitted to being the source behind the largest leak of state secrets in U.S. history. More than 1,000 days after he was arrested, Manning testified Thursday before a military court. He said he leaked the classified documents to the whistleblowing website WikiLeaks in order to show the American public the true costs of war. Reading for over an hour from a 35-page statement, Manning said, quote, "I believe that if the general public, especially the American public, had access to the information, this could spark a domestic debate on the role of the military and our foreign policy in general." Over the course of the hearing, Bradley Manning took responsibility for leaking the so-called collateral murder video of an Apache helicopter attack in Iraq.
Come on, fire!
Hey, Roger.
Keep shooting. Keep shooting. Okay. Clear. Come on. Clear. Clear. Orange.
One individual has been punished, Bradley Manning, in jail accused of leaking the video. The charges: downloading and disseminating classified information.
How could anyone justify shooting up that van, shooting up the person who was crawling onto the curb? These are war crimes, pure and simple. When I learned to be a soldier, an officer in the U.S. Army, I learned that you don't shoot at civilians, you certainly don't shoot at people trying to rescue the wounded, and you don't blow up vans with a couple of children in them.
In the Pentagon investigation report, there's no mention of war crimes. The pilots had reacted adequately.
Here's the government saying that we did no wrong, but yet they lied. They covered up the story. They covered up everything. And then all of a sudden being like, okay, well, Bradley Manning, who released this video, he's the wrongdoer in this whole situation. I think that Bradley Manning is a hero. I believe that this is a human being who is compassionate, who saw illegal activities taking place on a video. Granted, it was a couple years later, but still wanted the world to see that these actions are intolerable. And, you know, yeah, he's a hero for showing it. He's a hero for releasing it.
My view on Bradley Manning is that he's a very courageous young man who, with 22 years, did what I didn't have the guts to do during the Vietnam War.
I started my change of views as late as 1973 on the Vietnam War, and then we progressed to the early 1990s, and then we progressed to 9/11, and my views steadily became stronger that what the CIA was doing was wrong. I now am ashamed to have ever worked there and wish that I had not. Up until a couple of years ago, I found that impossible to say. Now I think I must make that statement.
And I think that we are going to need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission soon, not only for what our elite has done to Americans, but for what our elite has done in our name to the third world. And the United States of America set back national liberation and collective public intelligence by 30 years easily.
I believe strongly that until we have fundamental change in the United States, domestically, in the domestic system, until we have some kind of real democracy in this country, participatory democracy, where people have a say, and where we end the re-election of 95 to 97% of incumbents at every election, where there is a real political debate. Until we change the domestic system, we're going to have elitist control of the United States, we're going to have these foreign adventures and the grisly things, as I mentioned, that the CIA does abroad. So the real problem is here at home.
I always said that no matter how big or how much corruption there is, never greater than the individual or the might of doing the right thing.